At the July Monetary Policy Committee MPC meeting press briefing, Acting Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Folashodun Shonubi, responded to probing questions from members of the press on interest rate hike, foreign exchange market operations, Naira redesign, POS charges, and the central bank digital currency e-Naira. Today on the program, we bring you an exclusive interview with Mr. Shonubi, where he shares his experience so far in his new role as the acting governor of the Apex Bank and answers many more probing questions on inflation and the effectiveness of monetary policy rate hike, synergy between monetary and fiscal authorities, handling of the managed float foreign exchange regime, and other issues. But that's after this message. Stay with us.
Oh, I see. Just hold on. In that case, let me call out my PIN. It is 41.
Uncle, please stop.
Stop what?
You're giving someone else your personal identification number PIN?
Not someone else. It's from my bank.
Please hang up, Uncle. That's a fraudster.
That's not true. But they call out my full name. I am sure this is from my bank.
Uncle, no bank is ever going to call you to ask for your personal identification number PIN, your mobile banking password, or your card verification code, CVC.
But it sounded so genuine.
Yes, hackers and fraudsters always sound genuine. But please, Uncle, don't fall for their bait. Don't respond to any phony emails, text message, SMS, and don't click on any link you're not sure of.
Even if they call your date of birth or your BVN, don't give them your security details.
If you suspect any issue with your account, please go to your bank.
Oh, I see.
This message is from the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Mr. Folashodun Adebisi Shonubi holds a double master's degree in business administration and mechanical engineering, respectively, from the University of Lagos. He is a resourceful banker with more than 30 years professional experience. Prior to his present appointment as acting governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria by President Bola Tinubu in June, he was the deputy governor in charge of operations directorate at the bank. Before that, he was the managing director, chief executive, Nigeria Interbank Settlement System PLC from the year 2012 to 2018. The 61-year-old acting governor in this exclusive interview with TVC News' Lara Afolayan speaks on pressing monetary policy issues and the economy in general. Here's the excerpt.
Very different from what I expected. It's been interesting, it's been challenging, it's been rewarding, it's everything, but not exactly what I expected. But we thank God. My role before was Deputy Governor Operations. I guess the role of the governor actually expands the interaction with people. It expands your interaction with politics, with governance, with civil society. As Deputy Governor Operations, it was a bit more focused, I won't say limited, a lot more focused, a lot more technical, and now one is learning to be a bit more social. The reason why you want to tame inflation is that when you have high inflation, it's actually the poor that suffer the most. You can imagine a situation where somebody earns 1,000 naira and half of it already goes for food. If his salary doesn't increase at the same rate, if the price of food goes up, it's going to eat a lot more. Now it may become, instead of 500 to 750, he gets even less. As someone who earns a lot more, maybe 1 million, the increase will not have as much of an impact on them. So for us, it's important, it's one of the main goals of the central bank to manage price stability. Inflation therein is one of it. But the management of inflation takes a number of ways. One of them is increasing the MPR. The MPR encourages people to save. It reduces consumption on their part. We've done some studies that show that if we didn't increase the MPR rate, inflation will be much higher than it is now. So when we use the word tame, it has actually achieved some of what it is, which is to moderate. It does not stop inflation. It does not prevent prices from going up. But without what we've done, prices would have gone up a lot more. The other thing we need to note is that it's not only the MPR that's used to manage inflation. I mean, one of the key drivers of inflation is liquidity. Yes, the MPR should help, encouraging people to invest, and we then also take money out of the system. But we've been using other mechanisms to try and reduce the liquidity. When we increased the CRR rate to 32.5, the intent was to take out some liquidity. When we were applying our differentiated cash reserve, it was to take out liquidity. So we have a number of tools, and if you remember the communique at the end of the MPC, it said we would apply a variety of tools to managing liquidity, which we think is one of the big drivers of inflation. So it has helped, even though it hasn't curbed fully. A valid observation. The classical model is that once MPR goes up, all other rates go up. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, we do not run the classical all the time. We've been tracking interest rates, both on the deposit side, for people who are putting money into the banks, as well as on the lending side. We find out that the MPR does not affect those rates as much as we would like. The MPR has a more direct influence on the interbank rates rather than on the retail rates. We're trying to improve the transmission mechanism such that changes in the MPR would also reflect in retail lending rates with the banks. But as at now, it is not as effective as we would like it to be. But what the MPR has done, first there's a signaling effect that says we are tightening. We are raising the rates to encourage people to take money out of the system and give it to us. There's a signal impact. The other is to continue to indicate that we need to work towards real interest, effective interest rates. For as long as your interest rates are less than inflation, it means you're not encouraging people. It's easier for them to consume rather than save. If I save a naira now and I get 1 naira 25 kobo, but inflation is such that the same things will be going up for 1 naira 50 kobo in the period. There's no incentive to save. I might as well buy it and consume, and that drives up inflation as well. So it has those rules. On increasing it and the impact on jobs, I think you should also look at the flip side. What the central bank had been doing, even though we were pursuing bringing down the rates, we're also helping to increase productivity. We were trying to grow output. So a lot of the loans that we give was actually to solve the problems that you've highlighted. The intent of the loans was to increase capacity for manufacturing, providing raw materials, and encouraging local production of raw materials in particular. So we were trying to balance both. We always need some kind of intervention from the government, whether it's from the central bank or from the government itself. The intent of intervention is to focus the mind and resources on particular industries or sectors that we feel are important to the organization and also to the country. Okay? For us, local content is key. Local content has to be promoted and encouraged. In the central bank, we've been doing that for a while. The bullion vans we've been buying have been made locally. Everything around currency printing, the equipment that are used for shredding, they've been made locally. Even the boxes, we're replacing the aluminum boxes with plastic boxes that are manufactured locally. The reason why that's important is that it creates jobs. The value add is in the country. It helps to increase our economic activity. Most important, it reduces foreign exchange demand. So interventions will continue. Now, will the central bank be the one doing the interventions? Maybe not in the same form and the same magnitude that it was being done in the past. We are, and I'm sure you saw some of it in Mr. President's speech, that the government itself is looking at doing some interventions. So we are working with them, we are supporting them to some extent, but a large part of intervention will come with government policies and government agencies. Unlike before, where it seemed as if the central bank was the main one doing the interventions. That's not our primary responsibility, but economic development remains part of our responsibility. So we will do some interventions. In what form, shape, or manner, the environment will dictate, but not like we were seeing it before. I think the first obvious sign is that it has actually started. We are all aware that it wasn't all the money that was due to or accrued to the government and the states that was distributed at FAC. In the past, you wouldn't have had any such thing. We pleaded, and the coordination, because the impact on us in terms of liquidity and inflation would have been high. So we pleaded with the fiscal authorities. The fiscal authorities sat and saw what we were saying and understood the impact not just to us but to the country as a whole. And we jointly worked, even with the president, to get the states to agree. So that's already a good sign that shows that we are talking and we're working together. What I expect to happen is regular interfaces between fiscal and monetary in both informal and formal settings, broad understandings of where each is going. This is what we'd like to do as fiscal. These are our constraints. And we as monetary saying, these are the implications. These are the best way for us to look at it together. And before we then implement such thing, we've looked at it jointly, how it affects each and every one of us. It doesn't remove from the independence and separation of both. But the coordination then means that the outcome is a better one for us all because we anticipate it and we know the concerns of the others and we've tried to accommodate it. When we decided to bring back the old notes, if you understand, notes have a life cycle. And when you print them, they're a bit expensive, but it's expected that over their life cycle and regular usage, you're depreciating them. So I don't spend so much for a note and then in a year, I have to destroy it. If I destroy it after 3 years, it's more like I've spread out the cost over 3 years. It becomes effectively only 1/3 of the cost each year. So once we brought back the old notes, we said we would allow them to go through their life cycle. If we had withdrawn all of them at the same time, we'd have destroyed a lot of notes that still had useful life when we were accepting them as legal tender still. So the first thing is that we were printing the new notes, but we were stockpiling them because we already had quantities of the old note. And what we are seeing slowly over time is that as the old notes are coming to the central bank and are not issuable again, we're replacing them with the new notes. So rather than putting all the new notes out, we are going through the normal cycle we were doing before. You wouldn't have noticed because it was old note replacing old note, but now with new notes. And again, we have to be careful. We talked about liquidity earlier on being one of the main drivers of inflation. You can imagine if we just dumped all that and you had double the amount of notes outside, old and new, it would have had its own liquidity implications. So when I say you can take it to the bank, please go and ask your bank. We've been releasing more and more to them of recent, and you'll see that. We have a more transparent market now. We have a market that we called more open, willing buyer, willing seller. That's what we've said. You can go to your bank. We've also relaxed a number of rules on domiciliary accounts, again to make it easier for people. Will you tame speculators? No. You will always have speculators, especially when you have a change. and you have volatility. When there's a change in anything, there's some level of volatility, and that's where speculators make the most money. So we will have speculators, but what we've been seeing is that the rates have become more stable. And I think looking at closing balance rate or BDC rate is not an appropriate way to look at the market. What you should be looking at is the weighted average. The weighted average looks at the size of transactions and the rates that are applicable. With the closing market rates in a market like ours that's not fully or that much efficient, what we find is that even a small trade, at the end of the day, people have done $1 million trades, they've done hundreds of thousands of trades. And then towards the end of the day, somebody does a $15,000 trade at 800. Since we say it's open, the market reports 800 as the closing rate. So the weighted average is a better measure. And if you look at it, it's been fairly stable, fluctuating, but has stabilized over time. So our primary aim was stabilize. That we believe we've achieved largely. The next thing is then to get the Naira to a realistic level, which we are working on and have been working on. I'm not sure I've heard that complaint, but the impression I get is they're trying to withdraw cash. So if it's cash that they're trying to withdraw, the two questions we should ask: how do they fund their account? So you can imagine someone whose uncle, aunt has sent them money, $1,000, and it was a transfer. Somebody else has paid in cash, $1,000. Technically, that bank will only have $1,000. If both of them want to withdraw cash, you will have some issues. I know that there's a lot of cash in the market, to the extent that the banks before were complaining that cash was limited because we were paying out cash on IMTO, the money transfers. The laws then, or the rules then, was you pay cash out, which we have changed. And we monitor the bank's position, and their holding of dollar cash has actually increased. I think the changes we made on the domiciliary account has actually encouraged people to come and lodge in cash. So it's a bit strange if now they're saying there's no cash. There might have been some constraint in the past when we were paying out for the IMTO, the money transfers, dollar cash, because it's dollars wired in, but it's cash you're asking people to pay. But now it's the reverse that we're seeing. A lot of cash is going in, so it should not be a problem now. It's one of the benefits of the changes we made, that Naira payments can now be made for IMTO transfers. Domiciliary accounts can receive cash. What I'm seeing from where I sit, which is our monitoring report, because every day the banks give us their positions, their accounts, is I'm seeing cash building up. Okay. So if they're isolated cases, it would be nice to know, and we'll actually investigate and see. I like to use analogies, all right? Let's assume that the FX that we have is all like liquid, like water in a bucket, all right? But you have two bowls. So you can take from that bucket, you can put in one bowl or put in another bowl. What we've done with our reforms on the FX market has made it easier, and we are seeing more flows coming into our market, which is the foreign exchange market. In terms of volumes from people, the exporters were more comfortable selling. What that has done, where you have a limited supplies, we have reduced the amount that can go into the second bucket. And so there's pressure because their supply has reduced. What's their goal? Their goal is to see the Naira devalue as much as possible, because every time that happens, the dollars that they are holding is more valuable, and when they sell it, they make more of a profit. So if you tell me that the currency traders are complaining, I'll say, well, what a pity. What we really focus on is our market, which is one market, which is the foreign exchange market. And we're seeing a lot more flows coming in there. We're seeing more people who used to patronize them coming into that market. Honestly, I don't know how they do their pricing. I don't know where it comes from, but I expect them to complain at this point in time. So it's not surprising. I've actually read I read somewhere that the central bank doesn't have the experience. And I look back at an organization that's almost, 65 years old, that even before I came to the central bank, had people who had worked elsewhere and were training people in other central banks on foreign exchange management. And they say they don't have the experience. I think people should look at the institution first and foremost. And the Central Bank of Nigeria is one of the highest regarded, not only in Africa, but in the world. We have staff who have a lot of technical skill and understanding and experience elsewhere. So, not even looking at those of us who have been outside the central bank, that have been involved in settings and in countries where these have been done, the institution itself has memory of it because they've done it in the past. So saying we don't have the skills, I think, is a bit unfair. We are very, very clear on what we're doing. The outcome, some of which you're already seeing, when I say volatility has reduced, we can manage what we're doing, and what we're doing is a managed float. And we've always said that from day one. We're capable, we're competent, and the results which everybody will see will show that the Central Bank of Nigeria, I don't know where they got their own ideas from, definitely can do it. We need to be more productive, we need to be more efficient, and the reality is we need to focus on made in Nigeria, with resources from Nigeria. Until we increase our productivity, it's going to be difficult for everybody. What we have now largely is because supply, our production hasn't increased significantly, and our productivity, more importantly, productivity is what allows us for putting in the same amount of effort to get a lot more out. That means that the unit cost of the items will be lower. If the unit cost of the items are lower, it becomes harder for imports to compete. We should focus on the areas where we have competitive advantage and grow them. When we do that, the economy will grow. When the economy grows, we are not a saving nation. If you look at the level of savings in Nigeria compared to other countries, it is low. We're a consuming nation. Countries that save a lot tend to have lower interest rate because then there's a lot of money in the banking system, and banks naturally want to lend. So we have to increase our capacity and our productivity. Until we do that, it becomes difficult, and we're at the mercy of everything is going up, everything is going up, everything is going up. We're going through, people say we're going through difficult times, I don't doubt, but there are also interesting times that have opportunities. Our role as the central bank is very well defined now, and our focus is ensuring we have price stability. Price is both interest rate, which is tied to inflation, and exchange rate. We have not forgotten our development objective to grow productivity and production and ensure we assist the government with GDP going up. It's still there. But we want to ensure that price stability is a major focus for us. We hope on the back of it, other things will happen.
We have come to the end of today's episode, but be careful not to fall for any fraudulent recruitment portal or loan scheme advertisement purportedly from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Get your information from trusted sources always. Report unresolved banking issues to the CBN Consumer Protection Department using the email cpd@cbn.gov.ng. Attach relevant documents. Call the CBN Contact Center on the phone line +234 700 2255 226. Local call rates may apply. Write to us through the email address fromthecbn@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter for updates and to watch uploaded episodes of the program. We invite you to join us again next time. I'm Wulie Misi Dada. Stay safe and bye for now.